Greetings and welcome to another Lessons with Odin. On this episode, I will be showing you how to make this interesting statement piece. A focal pendant I have lovingly dubbed Spooky Spokes. This was made using the beads that were sent to me by Scarab Beads, so, as you all may know, Scarab Beads is generally where I get most of my spikes, so if you are interested in getting some awesome, spectacular spike beads, I highly recommend you check these guys out. And also be sure to check out their YouTube channel for additional tutorials and jewelry making tips, because they got some interesting things going on as well. This one was an adventure to create because of the way that Kheops, their hole alignments are. It was kind of a challenge, actually, but I'm kind of happy with what came out. You also don't really have to use spikes here. You can use something like 5mm beads to go through where the spike would be instead, but... So, yes, you can also play with the bails. You can hang it up here. This is just how I ended up with. So, for this project, you will need size 11 seed beads. I'm using these silver etch mix that are really, really cool. It has a really nice antique finish, and I really enjoy this color. It's really freaking cool. Size 15 seed beads. You will need 9 Kheops Par Puca Beads, or Super Kheops. I'm using 3 in color A and 6 in color B. You will need 2 7x17 spikes and 5 5x13 spikes. You will also need 12 Superduo beads, 36 3mm Czech fire polish beads in color A, and 12 3mm color B. Now, I haven't tried this with bicones or rounds, so feel free to experiment if you would like to, and feel free to let me know your results down below. You will also need 15 4mm fire polish rounds. Again, I haven't used this pattern with bicones, so feel free to experiment as you would like. And of course, your needle and thread. I'm using a heavyweight Nymo, as per usual, as well as a very small needle at size 13. You can probably get away with size 12. When I was designing the piece, it required the 13 though. So, 13 will make your life a little easier, but if you don't like working with those, feel free to try a 12. Let us get started! So what we're going to do is start off by bezeling one of the large spike beads for the centerpiece. So I have one 7x17mm spike here, and I'm just going to pass my needle through it, leaving a small tail. We're not really going to use the tail, so feel free to make it as small as you like. Just long enough so that you can tie it off later when you're finished with it. Then I'm going to throw it on one 3mm color A, one 11-0 seed bead, one 3mm, 11-0, and a 3mm. And I'm going to pass around my spike bead so that these beads wrap around half of my spike. Going to do the same thing again and pass back around the spike so that those beads wrap the other half, so that I have it all the way around, like so. Now from here, I'm going to pass through all the way around till I meet the other side, still holding on to my tail so that I keep my tension appropriate. Then I'm going to add one more size 11 seed bead and pass through the next 3mm bead along the way so that we join the two sides together. Then I'm going to continue on and repeat the same thing, so I add another seed bead in between these segments here. So like that, one more seed bead, and I'll pass through the next set, so that our frame ends up like that. Next, I'm going to move back around on this side before the seed bead that we just added. So here I am currently, and so I don't have to worry about my tail anymore. I'm just going to tie an overhand knot using the tail and the working thread. I'm going to pass through the next 3mm bead and size 11 seed bead so that the knot gets stuck inside the 3mm instead of a seed bead. So my thread is coming out of a size 11 seed bead. I'm going to add 2 more size 11 seed beads, one size 15, and 2 size 11 seed beads, and pass through the next size 11 seed bead, jumping over the fire polish, so that it ends up like that. You're going to want to repeat that all the way around until you've passed through all 6 size 11 seed beads. And here we are at my final set, and that is what you end up with. Now you can leave it like this, so it'll have a little flower shape in the center of your pendant, or you can cinch it together to form more of a crown around the spike bead. And we'll do that by stepping up. I'm going to pass through the next 2 size 11 seed beads and 1 size 15 seed beads so that I'm where I want to be. I'm going to add 1 size 11 seed bead, jump over, and pick up the next size 15 on the round, so that we cinch the 2 points together. You're going to repeat that all the way around until you've cinched all 6 points of size 15 seed beads, and then you're going to reinforce once or twice to make sure the shape takes form. And that is what we end up with. We want to move back down to one of the seed beads that are in between the 3mm beads. So, from a size 15 seed bead, I'm just going to move down the 2 next over, and then through the size 11 where I want to be. We're going to then start making picots using a combination of seed beads and the Kheops beads. So I'm going to start off by adding 3 size 11 seed beads and then passing back through the size 11 seed bead that I started at, so I form a picot on top. Just like this. Then I'm going to pass through the next 3mm bead and move over to the next size 11 seed bead. Next, I'm going to add 1 3mm bead color B and 1 hole of a Kheops Par Puca. Now I want to be sure that I have the right hole orientation when I thread this through, so that the triangle sits where I want it to, point towards the size 11 seed bead here. So it sits like that. Next, I'm going to add 1 size 11, 1 3mm color A, 1 size 11, pass down the second hole of the Kheops. Pull tight and we end up with something like this. To cinch it all in place, I'm going to add 1 3mm color B, and then pass back through the size 11 bead that we started from. With a bit of adjusting, this is what you end up with. Next, we're going to move over and add another seed bead picot. We'll move over here, add another Kheops, over, add another seed bead, and repeat that all the way around until you've completed the pattern. And this is what we end up with. So I want to move over until I'm at the top of this picot here. So I'm currently coming out of a size 11 seed bead here. I'm going to just move over a 3mm bead and a size 11 seed bead. Then I'm going up 1 and over 1. Then I'm going to add 1 size 11, 1 3mm color A, 1 size 11, and 1 size 15. I'm going to pass up through the hole in the Kheops. Then I'm going to move over and around until I'm out the other side of the Kheops. Then I'm going to add the opposite of what I've just added, adding on a 15, 11, 3mm A, and an 11, and then I'm going to pass through the next tip of the picot here. So just like that, I've done one side of my piece. Next, I'm going to add on the 11, 3, 11, 15, and go up the next picot here, go around and down the other side, and repeat all the way around until we've completed all sides of our piece. And this is what we end up with. Next, we're going to sort of reinforce the round as well as adding our spikes around the edges here. Currently, I'm coming out of the center of a set of 3 size 11 seed beads. What I want to do is end up at a 3mm bead at one of the edges here. So I'm just going to pass through the next set of beads, the size 11, 3mm, 11, 15, move up through the Kheops again and end up on the other side, then down until we've reached the 3mm bead here. Then we're going to add on 1 small spike bead, these are the 5x13s, and I'm going to pass through the next 3mm bead, jumping over the size 11s in between. So we end up with this. We're going to travel all the way around to the other side until we add the other 2 spikes. And this is what we end up with so far. Now what I want to do is have my thread coming out of the opposite side of the nearest Kheops bead here. So that is where my thread is coming out of. Then I'm going to add 1 size 15, 1 4mm fire polish bead, 1 size 15, and pass through the spike bead so that we fill in a gap over here. Next I'm going to add 2 size 11 beads, 1 3mm, 2 size 11 beads, and then pass around through the spike bead once more so that we form a covering around the other side. Once again, I'm going to add on 1 size 15, 1 4mm fire polish, 1 size 15, pass up through the next Kheops bead so that we cinch it tightly here. Move over to the other side of the next Kheops and repeat all the way around until you've completed the other 2 sides. And this is what our piece looks like so far. Next we want to move over until we are at the nearest 4mm bead. Then I'm going to add 1 size 11, 1 Superduo, 1 size 11, and 1 hole of my Kheops color B. Again, I'm going to pay attention to the hole orientation to make sure it lands where I want it to be. So it sits like this. I'm going to add one size 11, one 3mm color B, one size 11, and pass down the other hole of the Kheops bead. To finish up, I'm going to add one size 11, one Superduo, one size 11, and pass back through the 4mm bead that we started from. So the unit sits on top the 4mm bead here. From there, I'm going to pass through a size 15, the spike, and the size 15, then move over the next fire polish bead and repeat the same thing to add another Kheops. Like that. Then we're going to move over to the next 4mm bead on the next side, and repeat until we have covered all 4mm beads. And this is what you end up with. Have your thread end up coming out of one side of the color B Kheops bead. Then you're going to add one 3mm color A bead and pass through the second hole of the nearest Superduo bead. The one that currently doesn't have any thread coming out of it, so that it caps over like that. We're going to add one size 11 seed bead, and then we're going to pass through the 3mm bead right on top of a Kheops, so that it cinches that side together. I'm going to add one more size 11 seed bead and pass up through the second hole of the next Superduo over, like this, then add one 3mm color A, and pass up through the Kheops color B, like that. Then you're going to move over, around, and down until you're at the other side of the Kheops bead, and you're going to repeat this step until you've completed all 6 segments. So the 3mm color A bead was on top of a Kheops. When we move over on this side, the 3mm bead is going to be on top of a spike. That's the only difference, and it's going to be the same procedure all the way around. And that is what you end up with. We've got one more round to do. We want to end up with our thread coming out of a size 11 seed bead directly above a Kheops bead here. And I'm going to add one size 15 seed bead and pass through the 3mm right next door, so that we essentially form a little covering above the Kheops bead that joins these connections together. Then I'm going to add one size 11, one 4mm bead, one size 11, and I'm going to jump over to the next 3mm bead on our round, skipping the one in the center here. We want the one at the same level. So I'm going to pass through this one and end up with this. Then I'm going to add one size 15 seed bead and pass up through the size 11 bead that is near the 3mm I just threaded through, so that we finish that join there. Going to move through the next 3mm bead and down the next size 11 and repeat that process until we've passed through all of our sides. And this will be the final result. This is essentially the completed piece. Now what we need to do is decide what we want to do for the finishing touches. From here, I have my thread coming out of one of the 3mm color B beads, and I'm going to use these 3 red beads to add fringe to the bottom of the pendant. I've picked that because the 2 spikes are at the bottom here at this orientation, and the single one is at the top, but you can see in this example I have the opposite. I have the 2 spikes at the top and the single at the bottom. Decide what exactly you like in terms of the look of the piece, and determine where you want to move from there. So to start off my fringe, I have added on one size 15, one size 11, one size 15, one 4mm bead, one size 15, 4 size 11, one size 15, my small spike, this is the 5 by 13, one size 15, and 4 size 11s. I'm going to pull that all the way down my thread. Then I'm going to pass through the size 15, 4mm, and size 15 towards the top, like that. Then I'm going to finish off by adding one size 11, one size 15, and passing back through the opposite side of the 3mm bead that we started at. Then I'm going to reinforce by passing through this thread once or twice, just to make sure that it hangs nicely and for extra security. Once I finish that, I'm going to travel over to the 4mm bead, towards the center. You're going to follow the same steps to attach the large spike, except you're going to use much more beads. We're going to start off by adding on one size 15, two size 11s, one size 15, one 3mm color A, one 4mm, one size 15, five size 11s, one size 15, our large spike, one size 15, and five size 11s. I will then pass back through the size 15, 4mm, 3mm, and size 15, then add two size 11s and one size 15 before I pass back through the 4mm bead. I'm going to then reinforce it and then attach another small spike on the next 3mm color B bead on our round. Once you have all three of your points attached, now it's time to decide where you want your bail. For this piece, I decided to go with two bails on a side, sort of close to the end so that it falls into like a Y-neck type of deal. But for this piece, I think I'm just going to go directly in the center up here above it. Either way, you're going to want your thread to end up coming out of a 4mm bead, so whether or not you pick this 4mm or these two 4mm nearby, that's where you want to be. So then I'm going to add one size 11, one 3mm, one size 11, one 3mm, size 11, 3mm, and finally one size 11. And I'm going to pass back through the 4mm bead once more so that we form a loop directly on top. I'm going to reinforce this and then end your threads. And by that time, you will have your finished piece. So decide what sort of look you would like to do, and play around with the structure a little bit. You can even stop at a few rows to make smaller pieces. You can even make it as a bracelet and connect other bits and bobs to each side. It's kind of a modular piece. And personally, I'm not sure if the red and silver and black are really thrilling me with this kind of pattern. I think this would look a lot better in bronzes and greens, like forest green, stuff like that. But I don't know, let me know what you guys think, and if you make this pendant yourself, be sure to share with me some pictures, because I'd love to see you guys' interpretation of this. If you're not part of our group, our Facebook group, at Creations from Lessons with Odin, you should totally join and show off your pictures and what you can do. I'll leave pertinent links down below for that, but yes. That is what I have for you today. Be sure to check out Kheops Beads and their YouTube channel to see what other adventures that you can get into. All pertinent links will be down below. And if you like this tutorial, be sure to thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more bullshit from me. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and of course, if there's anything I need to be trying out right now, feel free to let me know down below. And I will see you next time.